This is the Sagrada Familia, or what it will look like once the structure is complete. But today it looks like this. It's a church that has been under construction for close to 140 years. So what the hell is taking so long? Now, to be fair, large churches have historically taken a lot of time to get built. The St. Basil's Cathedral took 123 years, and St. Peter's Basilica, well, its construction crossed 150 years. So honestly, putting it into context, Sagrada Familia's almost 140 years doesn't seem that far-fetched. But the thing is, these were not built in the 21st century. Today we live in an age where China can build a 10-story building in just a day. So why exactly is this church taking so long to build? And when will it be complete? And no, like a lot of people believe, it's not gonna be in 2026.
The world's most famous unfinished building. It has 18 spires alone in this one structure.
The engineering beneath it, absolutely exceptional.
Why would a church take so long to build?
Work on Barcelona's famously unfinished basilica now has a completion date 144 years after it began.
Our story begins in 1870 with a local bookseller called Josep Maria Boccabella. Now he had an idea to make a church just like the one that he saw in Italy. He raised some money, bought some land and hired an architect. And no, it wasn't Antoni Gaudi. Okay, the name here is a little long. Francisco de Paula del Pijar y Lozano. He was the first architect who ever worked on the Sagrada Familia. He envisioned a neo-Gothic church. His version of Sagrada Familia had ogival windows, flying buttresses, and a pointed bell tower. It wasn't extraordinary, but it would still be a beautiful church. So the design was approved and the work began in 1882. A year into the work, however, there was a problem. Francisco's design elements were turning out to be too expensive for the project, which is kind of funny and ironic knowing what happened next. So Francisco left and Joseph's advisor recommended his protege for the project, a young architect who barely had 5 years of experience. And that is how Antoni Gaudi got the commission for the Sagrada Familia. And when he took on the project, he wanted to create a church unlike the world had ever seen before. And his inspiration was nature. Now, have you ever observed nature? Like, truly observed it? The bones of an animal, the beak of a bird, how a mushroom grows. Nowadays, it has become a trend to learn from nature and incorporate that within your design. We call this biomimicry. And honestly, this approach has led to some very interesting designs. Well, Antoni Gaudi was doing that all the way back in the 1800s. He wanted the Sagrada Familia to feel like a forest. Light pouring in from the top, like being filtered by the leaves of trees as you walk through the woods. But his inspiration from nature wasn't just limited to aesthetics. He actually learned engineering from nature as well. Okay, so this is a spider web. If you zoom in a little, each strand of the web has a slight curve. Because the string of the web is basically like any string hung at 2 points. Structurally speaking, such a string is always in complete tension. If you take the exact shape and invert it, you will get an arch shape. This shape is completely in compression. That means if you make an arch in this shape out of any material, it will be able to stand because of its own geometry. This is called as a catenary arch. It is one of the most interesting things we have observed in nature, and Gaudi relied on it heavily when making the Sagrada Familia. So he attached strings to the plan of the church and put sandbags as weights. And finally, this model came out. This is a recreation of what Gaudi finally envisioned Sagrada Familia to be. I know, this is complicated to understand. But now imagine this was just scratching the surface of everything that Gaudi actually did. I mean, the man created columns that changed shape halfway through their length. He created skylights that were in the shape of hyperboloids. He created domes that were intersection of 12 parabolas. The man was a mad genius, and his elaborate and gravity-defying designs are one of the prime reasons this structure is still so complicated to build even in the 21st century. Now, as the years went on, Gaudi knew he didn't have much time. So in 1914, he decided to give up all other projects to focus solely on the Sagrada Familia. He had also understood that the project would never be complete in his lifetime. So he not only focused on constructing what he could, he started making models and drawings and leaving instructions for architects who would take up the project after him. On 10th June 1926, Antoni Gaudi met with an accident and he didn't make it. By the time he died, only 20 to 25% of the construction was done. But as we know, he had prepared everything. So after his death, one of his disciples took up the project and he worked on it according to Gaudi's instructions for over a decade. The work during this time was quite slow. But then in July of 1936, Spain broke out into a civil war. Now, Spain in the 1930s was going through a bit of political instability. In July of 1936, the conservative military had a coup and tried to overthrow the government. Long story short, they failed and started a civil war in Spain. In a matter of days, the country was split in half, with one zone controlled by the Republicans and the other controlled by the Nationalists. This war lasted 3 whole years, and only after it was over could work finally resume on the Sagrada Familia. But there was one big problem. 2 days after the war began, a group of young anarchists broke into the church, and they had one clear goal: to blow up the Sagrada Familia. They had smuggled in explosives to take down the building, but they were never able to detonate it. The church itself remained unharmed. However, they did start a fire, one that engulfed Gaudi's workshop. They destroyed many of his drawings and plans and shattered many of his plaster models. Everything that Gaudi had left behind was in ruins. After the war, a new director architect took over the project, Francesc de Paula Quintana. He worked on the Sagrada Familia with Gaudi and he restarted the work on the church, breaking ground on the Passion facade. But the biggest task he had was to reconstruct all the lost models and drawings and plans and whatever he could from photographs and whatever remained after the fire. And he was able to do so to whatever degree was possible. You see, when something is destroyed like this, a lot of guesswork goes into understanding what went where. And this is the point where a lot of people argue that the true essence of Sagrada Familia was lost. Since so much guesswork went into fill in the gaps between all of these lost models and drawings, that people say Gaudi's true vision got diluted. But nevertheless, Francesc was able to reconstruct a lot of the missing models and plans. And he worked on this church just like Gaudi till the day he died. You see, the thing about Sagrada Familia is that even though it's Antoni Gaudi's baby, a lot of people have given their whole life trying to finish this church. After Gaudi's death, the church got a series of new chief architects who all spearheaded the project the best they could. So in this point in our story, we are jumping ahead to 1985, to the newest and technically the 7th director architect of the project, Jordi Bonet Armengol. So when he took over, the project had already been going on for 104 years, but the progress was quite slow. But something interesting happened when this new architect took over.
Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a business computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a business computer to do.
This is an old ad for Apple that released in the 1980s. This was the beginning of the age of sophisticated computers. A lot of industries were slowly adopting this new tool that could now do calculations faster than any human on earth. Armengol knew that this new technology would be invaluable for the Sagrada Familia, and so he started the work of digitizing the process of designing the Sagrada Familia. Now we know that as the years went on, computers upgraded more and more. With the introduction of CAD or computer-aided design tools, computer simulations and 3D images became the new standard of working. Work after this was put into a new gear, and simultaneously you could work on different parts of the church, increasing both speed but also efficiency. In the year 2012, the Sagrada Familia got one final director, architect Jordi Fowley. He has since then been heading this entire construction process, and he will be the last director architect of this church. Hopefully. Fowley took his predecessor's legacy forward and continued to use digital and parametric tools to speed up the construction process of the Sagrada Familia. In the year 2015, he announced to the world that the Sagrada Familia was 70% complete. Okay, I know what you're thinking. More than 120 years and still only 70%. But there is more news. Soon after, they also announced when the church is finally going to be complete. It will be 2026. But then 2020 happened. Now 2020 is fresh in our mind, so I don't need to give you any updates on that front. Well, in March of that year, the church announced that it was halting all construction. This of course put a big hurdle on the plans of finishing the church by 2026, but not just because the work had stopped, but also because suddenly there was no source of revenue. Okay, let's talk about money. One of the reasons the church had such a slow construction in the 20th century was that all the funding for it at that time came through donations, which weren't always steady. This of course changed in the 1960s and 70s. People suddenly had both the money and the means to travel around the world, and they all wanted to come and see the church that wouldn't stop constructing. In 2019, more than 4 million tourists visited this church. Okay, come with me. Okay, so I am at the Sagrada Familia website right now, and as you scroll down, you can go to the tickets option. So here you can click on individual. This is one of the cheapest tickets that you can find for the Sagrada Familia, and they have 4 options: 26 euros, 30 euros, 40 euros, and 36 euros. Now, taking the 26 euros, which is the cheapest one, conservatively, 4 million tourists in 2019, 26 euros a ticket, that is more than 100 million euros. Well, that is a lot of money. So tourism had become one of the biggest source of income for this church. And then suddenly in 2020, the world stopped traveling and this income source just dried up. And honestly, at that time, no one knew how long that would last. So naturally, the plan of 2026 was abandoned. But we know that the world did get its shit together. So in October of 2020, the work on the church resumed. This time they did not announce any new dates of completion and just wanted to focus on getting back on track, back on getting this constructed. And slowly they started picking up pace. The construction accelerated. You got news of tower after tower getting finished. And tourism also got back to normal, actually better than normal. In 2021, the church announced that it had garnered enough funds to complete the construction of the church. So money, which historically was a big problem, wasn't an issue anymore. The construction from now on could go on at full speed, and the deadline of 2026 was once again put out to the world, but this time with a catch. Okay, before we actually talk about the completion, let's actually talk about 2026. What's so special about this year? Well, it actually marks 100 years since the death of Antoni Gaudi. Now, I never told you how he died, did I? Well, on 10th of June 1926, Antoni Gaudi was coming back from his morning prayers, and suddenly he was hit by a tram. At this time, he was spending so much time on the Sagrada Familia that he stopped spending time grooming himself. Because of his unkempt appearance, a lot of people assumed him to be a beggar. When he was hit, cab drivers even refused to have him in his cab and take him to the hospital. So by the time he actually got there, it was already too late. He had passed away. His funeral was attended by more than 5,000 people, and he was laid to rest in the crypt of the very church that he never got to finish. It's actually a pretty tragic story. The man devoted himself to this church, and this deadline of 2026 is to honor that life and that devotion. So it's actually more of a sentimental deadline. But that being said, 2026 will not be the year this church will be complete. Okay, here is what is actually happening in 2026. This tower right here, the tallest tower of the whole church with this giant cross, this is devoted to Jesus Christ. And in 2026, this will be complete. Post that, the work will still continue on sculptural details and details on the facade and construction of some minor aspects of this church. But to reach that final finish line, there is another huge hurdle. Okay, so this is where the Sagrada Familia is located in Barcelona. It takes a whole block of the city. The church boundary comes up all the way till the street. As I told you, the glory facade is supposed to be the front facade. But the entrance door from this facade is actually located on the first floor. So they're actually planning a wall climbing feature so you can just climb your way up to Jesus. I'm just kidding. The first floor entrance is not a design flaw, but it is a design problem. Back when Gaudi took over the project, he knew his facade needed to be seen. It needed reception space. So he came up with a solution. He created this space on the other side of the street and then designed a bridge and a staircase to cross over. Now back then, this was a farmland all around, so this could easily be done. But today, this is a residential city block. And the only way to create the staircase is to demolish this entire block, which means close to 3,000 people will either lose their home or their business. And they are not going without a fight. They formed a whole group and lawyers represent this community, but the final say is with the Barcelona City Council. Until now, no verdict has been reached. So the work on this part and other details and sculptures throughout the church will go on well beyond 2026, possibly till 2034. Sagrada Familia, if you think about it, is a very mysterious project. It is an outcome of such accidental events. What if Villar had actually got to finish the project? What if Gaudi had been in charge of the church from the beginning? What if his models were never destroyed? What if Spain did not break out into a civil war? What if the pandemic never happened? What if money was never a problem? Honestly, we will never know the answers to any of these questions. But there is one answer I can give you right now. That is a no. This church was not just made by Antoni Gaudi. Yes, it was his magnum opus, he devoted his entire life to it, but he wasn't the only one who did. He's one of many people who have worked day and night to bring this church to life. So I did some research, and here are the names of each and every person I could find who has worked on this project. And this building is a testament to all of their work and dedication. They're engineers, architects, construction crew, sculptors, artists, and so many more people who have given their blood, sweat, tears, and sometimes life to this project. If you're also someone who has contributed to the church's construction and don't see your name here, please comment below and let us all know. This church, this beautiful structure, is a testament to all of your hard work. So that was a brief history of the Sagrada Familia and why it is taking so long to bring to life. Hopefully it'll all be done by 2034. I tried to make this video as brief as possible and yet fill it with as much information as I could. I hope it was a good watch. I don't know how many views this video is going to get, how many people will watch it, but those of you who do and those of you who did watch it, I hope I added something to your understanding of the project. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up, do share it, and do subscribe. All of that really helps a channel and help it grow. So do consider doing that. I will see you guys soon with more such content on more amazing structures around the world. Let's have a discussion on the Sagrada Familia and different aspects of it in the comments below. I will see you soon. Bye bye.